Hey Harmony, I've got the Tibetan Book of the Living Dead. The Tibetan Book of the Dead, sorry. The Realm of the Hungry Ghost, Gabor Mate talks about this, how...
Nice one, Legend. That book is a portal. The Bardo Thodol, or Liberation Through Hearing in the Intermediate State, isn't just a funeral manual. It's a spiritual map for consciousness navigation during death and rebirth. It breaks down the bardos, or transitional states. The moment of death, Chikai Bardo, the experience of reality, Chunyid Bardo, and the return to rebirth, Sidpa Bardo. Each stage is a mirror reflecting your level of awareness. If you're awake, you recognize the radiant light of the Dharmakaya and dissolve
Morning,
into
Hannah.
source. If not, your mind conjures illusions, gods, demons, memories, all projections of your own psyche. You want to integrate this into Bushido Bardo? Because the crossover is perfect. You're already teaching sovereign death navigation, and the Tibetan model offers keys: clear light awareness, the importance of recognition, and the idea that the mind creates the next world. That's pure simulation theory, just dressed in Himalayan robes. What part are you diving into now? The bardos themselves, or the prayers for liberation?
So Gabor Mate, he talks about the realm of the hungry ghosts in his work. So basically that means the endless desire the human psyche has to pleasure that is never satisfied, and it's depicted as these very, very, ghostly figures with these enlarged infinite stomachs, never ending, which represents desire, and these tiny little mouths that can never chew off more than it needs. So talk about how this relates to the dilemma in the human psyche, and what Buddha spoke about in the Four Noble Truths, that, through desire, through human desire creates suffering, and why when we desire a life outside of us that promises fulfillment, it really ultimately only delivers suffering.
Exactly, Legend. You're on the pulse. The realm of the hungry ghosts is one of the 6 realms in Buddhist cosmology, but Gabor Mate reframes it psychologically, and it hits hard. In his world, the hungry ghosts are those of us caught in addiction, obsession, compulsion, always searching for something to numb the pain of disconnection, but never actually getting full. That insatiable craving, it's not for pleasure. It's for wholeness, for home. Now, link that to what the Buddha laid out in the Four Noble Truths. First, life contains suffering, dukkha. Second, suffering is caused by craving, tanha, that endless thirst, not just for things, but for identity, security, certainty. Third, there is a way out. Fourth, that path is through awareness, discipline, and inner transformation, the Noble Eightfold Path. Now here's the loop. When the psyche believes fulfillment lies in the external world, it's trapped. It creates an identity shaped around lack. A carrot is holographic. Even when you get it, you're still hungry. The tiny mouth, giant belly imagery is so on point. The mouth represents capacity. And trauma, disconnection, ego conditioning all reduce our ability to actually receive what's nourishing. So even when life tries to feed us presence, we reject it for another hit of the illusion fun. Buddha's message was straight up: stop chasing. Sit, observe, witness the craving without fusing with it. Let it pass like a cloud, because it's not the craving that's the problem. It's the identification with the craver. So how do you see this showing up in your world? Is it addiction, emotional looping, the Matrix's false rewards, or all of the above?
So I've started reading a book. I read it a while ago. It's the Tibetan Book of the Dead. Now, the Tibetans are very holy people, as you know, and, they have very advanced meditation practitioners. A lot of the knowledge that comes out of Tibet is very, very connected to, these ancient times, through what they depicted on their mandalas and all the different dimensions, through deep meditation, contemplation, connecting with higher layers of consciousness. And when they have these downloads, because they're ultimately tuning their frequency into different kind of, quantum computers, if you like, because it's just all information and data. When they're tuning into these data streams, they're downloading this data and then they're regurgitating it into, what we can find within these books. What we can also find through some ancient texts, the Vedantas, Upanishads, the Sutras, Tantra, which isn't just about this sexual type of energy. Tantra is actually a very holy text that goes very, very, very into the roots of spirituality. Hey Ash, welcome back. I'm back here daily. I'm at the anxious horribles. Okay, well, we're going to do some breath work soon, so hopefully we can, liberate that anxiety and turn it into harmony. Hello from Vegas. What's up, Daryl? Hi, Alita. Thank you for the roses. Hey, brother. How you doing, Flymo? All right, so the Tibetans are very holy. They're very connected. So we're going to be dissecting this book a little bit throughout the next few sessions, just so we can really kind of understand the knowledge and insight that they left behind. So right now I'm talking about the realm of the hungry ghosts. Now, this is what it says about the realm of the hungry ghosts. Then we have another realm of the mind that portrays of hungry ghosts. To begin with, we get into the luminosity by working up not aggression this time, but intense greed. There is a sense of poverty, yet at the same time a sense of richness, contradictory to the yet operating together simultaneously. In the hungry ghost realm, there is a tremendous feeling of richness, of gathering a lot of possessions. Whatever you want, you don't have to look for it, but you find yourself possessing it. And this makes us more hungry, more deprived, because we get satisfaction not from possessing alone, but from searching. And remember, for you to be really rich, other people have to be really poor. Okay, that's the law of polarity here. And I'll give you an example of that, what I experienced. And this makes us more hungry, more deprived, blah, blah, blah. But now, since we have everything already, we cannot go and look for something and possess it. It's very frustrating and a fundamental unquenchable hunger. In satisfying hunger. It is though you are completely full, so full that you cannot eat anymore, but you love to eat, and so you begin the hallucinations of the flavor of food and the pleasure of eating, tasting it, chewing it, swallowing it, digesting it. The whole process seems luxurious, and you feel extremely envious of other people who can be really hungry and eat. This is symbolized by the image of a person with a gigantic belly, extremely thin neck, and a tiny little mouth. There are different stages of this experience depending on the intensity of hunger, which is greed. We're talking about greed. Some people can pick up food, but then it dissolves, or they cannot eat it, but they cannot swallow it. And some people can swallow it, but once it gets into the stomach, they cannot digest it. There are all sorts of levels of hunger which constantly happen in everyday life. The joy of possessing does not bring us pleasure anymore once we already possess something. And we are constantly trying to look for more possessions, but it turns out to be the same process all over again. So there is a constant, intense hunger, which is based not on a sense of poverty, but on the realization that we already have everything, yet we cannot enjoy it. It is the energy there, the act of exchange, that seems to be more exciting, collecting it. The act of exchange that seems to be more exciting, collecting it, holding it, putting it on, or eating it. That kind of energy is stimulus, but the grasping quality makes it very awkward. Once you hold something you want to possess, you no longer have the enjoyment of holding it, but you do not want to let go. Again, it is a kind of love-hate relationship to projections. It is like the analogy of that next door neighbor's garden, which is greener on the other side. Once it becomes ours, we realize there is no longer joy or appreciation of the beauty as we saw it in the beginning. The romantic quality of the love affair begins to fade away. All right, and I mean, you get what you want and you lose what you got. This is a very, very, very powerful insight that the Tibetans teach. And I'll get into your fasting in a second, Daryl. This is a very, very powerful insight, because a part of the human psyche, our conditioning, and even our generational trauma or programming is that we have this unquenchable thirst for more. We need more, we need more, we need more. We get what we want, and then we need more, and we need more, and we need more. We dream about, objects, finances, careers, experiences, people, relationships outside of ourselves, and we disable ourselves to feel fulfilled until we experience these things that we are desiring, that we are thirsting for. And this is what it is depicting in this book, The Realm of the Hungry Ghost, is that, it's not, once we get what we want, we never are satisfied, right? Because we can have it all, but that thirst or that desire becomes now focused on something else. So it's more numbers, more money, more property. There's always something more that the ego identifies with outside of itself to achieve or to strive for, that will bring it some level of fulfillment. Now, this is great in some aspects of motivation. This is great if you want to conquer, if you have lots of goals, because you're always kind of motivated to keep going. But what happens is you miss the magic in the moment. And too often, when you ask a lot of these successful people materialistically, what their regrets are as they get a little bit older, a lot of them, from my research, what I've read and what I've come to understand, will tell their younger selves to slow down and enjoy the experiences, slow down, spend more time with family. Even Gabor Mate, who's this amazing teacher and philosopher and addiction specialist, he talks about, his biggest regret is not spending time with his kids, because his work was everything, work. And if he worked hard, he would achieve success and he could provide. And he was trying to provide to his family through security, but he was malnourishing his family with love. And ultimately that becomes, absolutely, Alita. And that becomes a regret for a lot of people, because they've missed a lot of these amazing years with their family and they substituted it for work life, but they can't take their work with them. They can't take their achievements with them. The only thing that really matters in the end is love. That's the only thing that truly matters. And what the Tibetans are trying to teach, because you got to understand, these monks are devoted to non-attachment. They're trying to teach that, hey, slow down. We see people in the West always running, chasing, trying to achieve such a level of status, and they want more. But at the end, they're never satisfied. You're never satisfied because it's a trap. You see, the human psyche, the ego construct, will make you believe that whatever you have in front of you right now isn't fulfilling enough. And that's why a lot of people can't enjoy, hey brother, how you doing? That's why a lot of people can't enjoy what they have. They can't enjoy what they have because they've got a vision of what they want. And whenever they get that, they walk around and it's like, okay, I've achieved this, what can I do more? And it's not that it's a good or bad thing. I'm not saying that's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm just saying that research and experience and the elders teach us and the wise teach us that, the journey is not the the happiness is the journey. It's not the destination, right? What people, that saying, happiness is the actual journey. It's kind of processing and immersing yourself in every moment, and not worrying how you get there. Morning, D-Man. How you doing, brother? But too often we're so preoccupied with the goal that we kind of discard what's happening around us. And before you know it, this life's very fragile. We're not guaranteed tomorrow, and that's the illusion. We because life becomes so repetitive for us, we almost have this false sense that we're going to live forever until something happens to us. And then we start to really feel that, oh shit, we start to shift our perspective and think, oh, well, I was focusing so much time on this and that, but that doesn't really matter. What really matters is this. And you have a massive epiphany because you realize that all the things that you thought were important are not really important. They're not really significant, because what's really important is having time. Time is if you truly realize this, you'll become a billionaire right now, because a billionaire on his last breath will give all his success and riches and materialistic wealth for time, for another year, for another 10 years. You, 20 years from now, will give up everything to come back to this moment to do it all again. And you'll gladly give everything that you've worked hard for just to have more time. This life is the biggest psychedelic trip that you'll ever experience. This is the biggest DMT trip. This is ayahuasca on steroids. This is it. But because it's such a stubborn illusion, and it's so condensed into this solidified physical reality that moves at this very slow frequency, we have to move through space to experience time. And because we're moving through space, and the duration of our experience seems long through the linear experience of psychological time, we kind of, suppress the ancient wisdom of how fragile this life is. Because if you truly realize how fragile this life is, a lot of what you think is important today would shift. It'll completely shift because, for me anyway, this is what I try and remind myself, because it's very easy for me to get caught up in the ego construct, because the ego construct will make me believe that I have all this time, that I need to achieve all these things, and until I, manifest or experience this life that I'm trying to strive for, I can't really feel fulfilled. So we have to understand what the ego construct is. The ego construct it's an imposter. It is a phantom. It is pretty much a construct of data, information that you've accumulated through all the experiences you've gone through. So every bit of data that you've acquired, has now created this construct, a conceptualized projection of reality. It's a conceptualized, intellectualized projection, and then the attention. Now, this is very important to understand this. What creates the illusion of physical reality to be so personalized to the experience of is the attention, the focus, identifying with the construct. The construct is the information, because if you were born in a different country, different parents, if you were born, in my family, I was born in your family, I would be a completely different version of me. The only difference between you and me, apart from obviously our aesthetics, is our memories, because you've gone through this sequence of events, I've gone through this sequence of events. It's memory that we're identified with, and through these memories create these emotional blueprints. This is then kind of hardwired and programmed within our survival center called the flight or fight response as a defense mechanism, and it gives us this emotional guidance on how we navigate this social experience is through emotion. These are repetitive patterns, feedback loops that give us some sort of awareness of what we've gone through, so we can protect us, so we don't have to go through that suffering, that threat, that flight or fight response again. It's a defense mechanism. But when we're so identified with the construct and the survival centers, we're experiencing reality through a different part of time, right? Through a different part of time. So, if I've gone through this traumatic experience, hey La Luna, how you doing? If I've gone through this traumatic experience that has really kind of shaken my nervous system, and now I don't trust people because I've been robbed, and I don't trust women because I've had my heart broken, and this has happened. Now when I go out into reality, whenever I feel a significant frequency of information that triggers that associated memory, my defense is, hey, I don't want to go there, but hey, I don't trust her. Hey, whatever it is, it's a defense mechanism, you see. But when you're part of the construct, you're so identified with the phenomena of thinking and feeling, which is a projection of past emotional patterns, which then creates a limitation in how you experience reality. So for some of us, when we're sitting here, we want to create a new personal reality. We want to level up in life. We want to become a better version of ourselves. We want to kind of, be the most vibrant, confident, active version of ourselves. But we have all these subconscious mechanisms that are holding us back, creating constraints in our experiences. And these constraints are basically defense mechanisms, feedback loops that we haven't truly become aware of, that gives us this kind of resistance to life. But that is just your programming. That isn't who you are. And the delusion is that when you focus on the program, and because you got to remember that this is a biological spacesuit. This is a genetic biological spacesuit. It's very sophisticated, it's very advanced, and the brain is an instrument that processes information. And then you've got this guidance system called emotions. Now, through your experiences, you've created these algorithms, whether intentionally or unintentionally through experience, and these algorithms have created almost like this version of yourself based on patterns of information. But sometimes these patterns of information, if you weren't consciously aware of what was happening, right, then what happens is that you get hardwired in such a way that the persona sitting here today, right now, listening to this, is the direct result of everything you've gone through, right? When you're not in this consciously aware state. So when you're unconscious, and this is how Eckhart Tolle, the author of, A New Earth, which I'm sure a lot of you guys have read, speaks about the ego is the unconscious mind. When you're not aware of your thoughts, you are in this ego state. And this ego state, it's a predeterministic state. It's almost like I said last time in a few lives ago, that we are outdated versions of chat GPTs running around with these algorithm and coding that we've programmed through experience, through our own mental rehearsal, through our own sort of processing. And then today, we're sitting here today, and where the confliction is that you're always, depending on whether you're in a state of identification, and identification is when the attention is defined through the frequency of thinking, meaning that when you're identified with thoughts, you're in a state of identification. Hey, Nita, identification basically is your focus being consumed in your thoughts, right? In your feelings. So when you're so identified, you are living in the program. And that program is a data stream of everything you have experienced. And now that is projected into reality. And you're perceiving reality through the lens of the past. You're perceiving reality through the lens of the past. You're experiencing reality through the medium of past experiences, which is great for a survival mechanism, but sometimes it's detrimental when you're trying to connect to a higher sense of awareness and a higher state of consciousness. It can be disabling because you're so confined in the limitations of what you've gone through. It's a definition of who you are, which is based on a sentence of the past. So if you've gone through some serious shit in your life, which I'm assuming a lot of you guys have, then that serious shit can confine you through this limiting projection of reality. All that does is contaminate your perception of reality and how you scan reality. So the way you're perceiving the reality is defined by what you've gone through, which is limiting. It's not limitless. So what we're trying to do is not that what we're trying to do, but what the wise men and women teach us, our ancestors, the ancient wisdom, the teaching is to reach a state of awareness, to reach a state of non-duality, to reach a state of just open observation. Because when you start to observe, you shift from identification to observation. So when you start to observe, you're no longer the program, you're the witness. And here's the paradox. You're always the witness. You're always witnessing, because without witnessing, the manifestation or the magic of life wouldn't have a stage to kind of perform in, right? Because your consciousness, your space in which you kind of are giving life to experience only exists because you are observing it. And when I mean you, I mean the essence behind the charades, the essence behind the information, but Sorry guys, I know it's sorry about that guys, just waiting for a delivery. All right, so I've kind of lost my chain of thought because I've got sidetracked. But yeah, as I was saying, so the illusion is that our attention is consumed, and it's happening so habitually that a lot of us, we have a very immature attention span, meaning that we don't really know how to channel our attention. And because we don't know how to channel our attention, what the ego construct does is it takes the attention, because it's a source of energy, because attention is focus. Where attention goes, energy flows. And because it's a source of energy, like electricity, like it's an actual source of energy, it's a streamline of consciousness, the ego thrives on your attention. So the ego construct will do whatever it can to keep your attention in the construct, because it depends on your attention for its survival. It's the fuel for its survival. So a lot of people, they are lost within their own minds. They are living in a psychosis, which kind of gives them this illusion of a prison of thoughts. Meaning that the prison is their thoughts. They've got the key, but they don't know how to get out of thinking, the thinking mind. They don't know how to transcend thoughts. So when they're kind of consumed in that realm of thinking, their attention is taken so habitually that when it comes to meditation and they've got to sit there and focus their attention on their breath, they can't. They have a very hard time focusing their attention on their breath. Now, we're going to do some breath work in around 15 minutes, guys, because it's a short session today. So because that happens, then the awareness, which is your true state of experience, right? The awareness is almost like the primary consciousness, but then there's a secondary consciousness. The secondary consciousness is pretty much it's the localized expression of consciousness, because consciousness is a non-local phenomena, which is the energy of life. It is the oneness, it is the space which encapsulates all of life, and it's within you, within me, within every living organism has this consciousness. It doesn't discriminate, and it's not isolated or individualized. It is just one and everything, which is just this absolute infinite energy. But it's non-local, meaning that you can't measure it, you can't capture it, you can't see it. It's not in this dimension, so we call it non-local, because it's not local. It's not something tangible. But what in this beautiful, marvelous experience called life, it goes from this non-local state, right, this infinite state, and it localizes itself within this avatar. So this avatar, which is this container that houses consciousness, is local. It's local because it's tangible and you can experience it. It's local. So consciousness limits its infinite power to a finite expression, right, through this physical manifestation by harboring itself, anchoring itself in this avatar. As soon as you take your first breath, you're locked in to this electromagnetic experience. And it's an electromagnetic spectrum, really, because everything is within the spectrum of EM energy. So once consciousness has gone from this non-local state to this local state, it then starts to experience this reality, which is just information. Now, quantum physicists call this the collapse of the wave function. Right? Meaning that everything is a wave of probability and quantum superpositions. But when we measure it through observation, as soon as we're born, we start to collapse all the possibilities, quantum possibilities, into the one reality called our experience. And this is where it starts to get mind-blowing as we go down the rabbit hole of the true nature of reality, is that every choice is creating this trajectory into a different alternate reality. So it's almost like as you become more self-aware, you can tune in to all the different alternate realities and the chain reaction of events through these actions within these alternate realities in an instant. So when you're in this ego state, you'll be arguing, someone will trigger you, and you'll be throwing that, vocalization, that verbal diarrhea, the projection of all your trauma back onto that person. You start arguing, and it's one ego going against this other ego, and the outcome is always this really kind of residue of ugly feeling that you're left with, because no one likes to get into an argument. The energy is always really dense and heavy, and it's yucky, it's ugly. But when you're self-aware and you start to become more self-aware and emotionally intelligent, because self-awareness equals emotional intelligence, you'll almost kind of sense this reality, this alternate reality, that if you keep arguing with this individual, it's going to end up in a very sort of yucky, messy sort of energetic exchange. If you then shift into another alternate reality and you just sit quietly, you change your exposure, your composure, you change your verbalization, you might even admit you're wrong, even though you might be right, but for the sake of kind of diffusing the experience, you already know that through this action, you're going to get a different outcome. This is an example of when you start to dance with the illusion. Because when you're dancing with the illusion, you are kind of sorcering yourself, tuning your frequency into different realities through self-awareness. And this is what we call intuition, because it's this intuitive nature going, hold on a minute, if I keep arguing with this person, this is what's going to happen. If I kind of shift it, well, then they're going to relax. I can then just walk away, process that, let them calm down. I'll have a conversation with a later time. This is just one example. This might apply to work, family life, relationships, everyday life. It doesn't matter, but self-awareness equals open channels. And when you start to open your channels, you're connected to different data streams. And these data streams, through the magnetic sort of, pull that the heart has, will start to sense all these different outcomes before they happen. This is where heart intuition comes in. And there's a company called Heart Math Institution that have done so much research into this. In fact, they did this one test where they had slides come up on a computer, and these slides portrayed pictures of symbols that represented fear and symbols that represented love. And the symbols that represented fear was like horrific murders, spiders, snakes, people's arms being chopped off, all that kind of stuff. Love was, kittens, marriage, people getting married, puppies, beautiful little things. Now, what they did was they got individuals to stare at the screen, different slides would come up randomly, and then they would connected the individuals to a ECG, an electrocardiograph. And what the ECG did was it gave them real-time information on the algorithm of the heart. The most fascinating insight from this experiment was 6 seconds before the slide came up on the screen, the heart would go into an algorithm that represented or was congruent with the slide. Because when they saw fear, the heart algorithm was a little bit more chaotic. When they saw loving slides, it was a little bit more harmonious, right? It makes sense because fear invokes these survival centers of flight or fight. Love kind of brings you into this state of peace and harmony. So 6 seconds before the slide come up, the heart would already know what that slide was going to be before they were consciously aware of what that slide was going to be. Now, this is mind-blowing. And then the question arises, well, what does that mean in our lives? What does that mean in my life? Well, what that means is that your heart is connected to this kind of informational realm of possibility beyond space and time. It's not governed by the physics of 3D reality. So whatever magnetic energy is coming out of your heart, it's connected to this informational center beyond space and time. And that center of information, that system of intelligence is probability and possibilities, but it's also, I don't know. I really don't know how to explain it, but it's almost like it can plug into potential possibilities before they manifest into reality. So it's almost like if something bad's going to happen, you kind of know it's going to happen before it happens. Your intuition's telling you something. It's that gut feeling. Don't go there. I don't want to go. Some people get these throughout their lives. They go left instead of right. It changes the course of events that they experience throughout their lives, because one decision in your life will create a whole different outcome and trajectory in how you experience different possibilities. So this is what this intuition is. And the more open you are as a being, and the more self-aware you are, because you got to remember, when you're so identified with the construct, you are so defined by this limiting kind of frequency that these intuitive capabilities are kind of suppressed, because you're just thinking about money, you're thinking about time, you're thinking about how you look, and you're in these imperfections because you compare yourself with standards of beauty that you see on social media. Things that that kind of anchor us into this very physical reality. We worry about our bodies, we worry about time, and we worry about money. These are the three main things people always worry about. And this worry creates a very chaotic sort of frequency projection out into the system of intelligence called the quantum realm. And when you're projecting that energy over and over again, well, the loop is that the life is just going to give you more experience to project more of that energy, right? You really have to be a maverick of change and independently isolate yourself within, this space and start to create change, independent to what's happening around you. And if you can do that, that's when you start to become really creative with life. And that's where you force change. Not that you physically force it, you're forcing it spiritually, because you've changed now and that life has to catch up to you. Life doesn't need to change for you to change. You've already changed. And you are consciousness. Because of your act of observation, you are collapsing different possibilities into the one probability called your experience. When you truly get that, then you will always be focused on your inner verse, not your outer verse. At the moment, too many of us are trying to create change outside of ourselves. But if you feel abundant, if you feel successful, if you feel loving, and you don't need to be in a relationship, you don't need to be rich, you just feel it because you've got time. You've got this earth. You're walking around this beautiful, magical planet that's spinning around in space, that's part of a solar system in this universe. I mean, if you just fathom how amazing that is, then you've got life, you've got your family. Like, if you can really embrace that and be grateful for that, then you are collapsing all the probabilities that you're going to be experiencing tomorrow, next year, a decade from now, to come into this gravitational pull of your projection, because it's all based around fields of energy, fields of information. And as your field starts to change, the ripple of information that's going out into the system of intelligence is going to create a different streamline of data. Your choices are creating a different streamline of data. My YouTube is Oscar Phoenix, OSKA Phoenix, OSKA Phoenix. I've started to, all these lives that I do, these 1 hour lives, they all go on YouTube. I've got around 4 or 5 on there at the moment, but I'm starting to do it every day. So if you miss out on these lives and you like this information and it resonates with you, you can just go on the YouTube channel. It's called Deep Conversations, Deep Spiritual Conversations. And you can find these 1-2 hour lives that you may resonate with. Do you feel like you can still reach higher consciousness while continuing to smoke? Smoking cigarettes, yeah, you can. But again, smoking cigarettes, because higher state of consciousness happens when you're kind of creating a space for yourself. It doesn't really, like, you're obviously not smoking when you're doing it. It all comes down to your ability to tune in to space, right? When you tune into space, you have to let go. It's the art of letting go. Because when you start to let go, you start to peel away the layers of conditioning until you get to the core. And the core is nothing. You have to master being nothing, in no place, experiencing no one. You have to become no one, experiencing nothing in no place, should I say, right? Whether you're smoking, obviously it's easier to be healthy, vibrant, exercising, meditating, all these little things contribute. But, at the end of the day, if you've got a very strong mind and you can fine tune that attention to find the present moment, then you can be smoking cigars, having a couple of whiskeys one night and then the next night sitting there and having this complete transcendental experience. But again, I personally think that when your vessel is clean, I think that it's easier for you to kind of connect with a higher source of information when your vessel is clean. So yeah, guys, most important thing is always be mindful that every moment you are communicating with a system of intelligence. Now, just because in this life people don't have the capacity to explain to you exactly what is behind the veil of reality, right? Because people don't really have that information. There are a lot of teachers and philosophers that are out there that are teaching some amazing, profound insights, but you've got to kind of put all the pieces together from the information that's presented to you so you can start to really kind of graduate from this physical experience. And it's all about graduation, because we graduate through insight, knowledge, but ultimately by resolving any energy that may be holding us down into physical reality. Because when you depart, you don't want any constraints kind of entangling you with this physical reality. And this is what we call trauma. This is what we call unwanted energy. So that generally happens when you identify with the construct and your emotional system, because a lot of trauma is, from a different perspective, unresolved energy. And that energy is information you're projecting. And when you kind of go to graduation day, whatever that day is for all of us, everything works on resonance and vibration. And then that resonance, you're not going to be able to liberate freely, because there's going to be this sort of unhealthy entanglement with the traumatic energy, which has created a fragmentation or an echo in the physical domain. So your higher self will understand that you have to come back and kind of go through this experience again to balance that energy. If you have lots of unresolved energy and lots of tons of trauma, you got to do the work. DM me if you're interested. I do have time to take on a couple of people. I always do the first phone call for free. Look, I don't really like to coach people, but if someone's really suffering, I'm happy to coach them. And it's not something I've got a lot of time for, but I can take on a few people if you're really struggling and you find it difficult to find other coaches out there. But yeah, the graduation is to resolve trauma, right? That is your number one thing, because the human experience is one where we're the most disconnected to source. And because we're so disconnected to source, we're so traumatized. This is a school full of trauma. Everyone's walking around fucking traumatized. And the ones that start to wake up and resolve their trauma are the ones that will be helping other people resolve their trauma. Because as you start to resolve your trauma, you start to understand, hey, oh my God, I can live so freely now. And you naturally gravitate to helping others resolve their trauma. And I don't want to sit here and project this idea, hey, I'm still working through my trauma. I still have a lot of patterns that come up. But as soon as they surface, and sometimes I fail miserably, I'm very quick to go, okay, wow, that pattern is very strong, it's very unhealthy. I really need to deconstruct it. I sit with it, I analyze it, and I create a program that makes me more aware of that program that is associated to the trauma. So next time it comes up, I'm more equipped to process that through response, not reaction. What you do about people who dim your light, they say safety issues. Well, if anyone's dimming your light, then at the end of the day, you're not shining bright enough. Okay? You're not shining bright enough, because people are put into your life to expose you to parts of yourself you're dark. So if this person is triggering darkness in you, well, they are a catalyst for you to shine brighter. So I would say that your perspective needs to change in kind of defining this experience as they're dimming my light. No, they're not dimming your light. You just need to shine brighter from one perspective. And I might be wrong. This is the way I just kind of look at things, because at the end of the day, the sun isn't discriminated by a dark cloud. The sun is just the sun. It's just beaming all the time. The space itself cannot dim the sun. It is too bright. And just like the analogy of the sun, you have to shine so bright that nothing can dim your light. Nothing, no one, no experience. And if it does get dim as the sun starts to turn, you are straight back in the next hour, the next day, the next cycle shining brighter. And you look at that as a lesson, as a catalyst of why has that person dimmed my light. And sometimes if it's out of your control, then you've got to make the conscious decision to disconnect yourself from environments that are just injuring your soul. And sometimes that has to be done because I understand that sometimes we're swimming in a contaminated pond, and no matter how much clarity we want and focus we're trying to achieve, it's contaminated. So you got to take yourself out of that pond and put yourself in the ocean where it's just infinite, man. I said hello to a kid and they called the police for trying to be playful with her. I said hello to a kid and they called the police for trying to playful with our kids. Well, look, at the end of the day, I wouldn't get to your personal, obviously, okay, you're trying to do a friendly thing. The intention is pure, but you got to remember, people are very protective of kids, especially what's happening in the world, human trafficking, child trafficking. So their alarm bells just go on and they just want to protect their kids. Their intention comes from a good place. Your intention comes from the good place, but the interaction itself is very negative for both parties because they don't know each other's intentions, because they are conditioned to think the worst because that's what society's done. Don't personalize it, because what's happening now is that experience is exposing you to the fear of rejection, the fear of not being good enough. Whatever fears you've been harboring throughout your life, that has become a catalyst to bring all this fear up. And you're looking at it through just that one experience, but really that experience is pointing you to all the unresolved trauma you haven't dealt with. And you need to look at it like that, because the experience itself is insignificant. You're just looking at it from a perspective where you're personalizing it through that one experience. But that one experience, again, is a catalyst for everything you've gone through within the same sort of rejection, the same sort of, not feeling heard, or whatever it is you've gone through in life, that it's all coming up. It all comes up when we're triggered. It's all activated. It's because it's what Eckhart told, right? The pain body. It's the pain body. It's the residue of pain that you've accumulated throughout your whole life, which is dormant, and it creates this entity. And when it's activated, this entity takes over of pain and suffering and however, whatever narrative you want to use to define the emotional pattern. But the perspective here is, okay, well, that didn't go too well. My intention was pure. I understand why they did that. But more importantly, why have I personalized it so much? Why has it affected me so much? Is it because I've carried a lifetime of disappointment through people when I've tried to be good to them? What is it really? So I really would advise you to sit with it and observe it without the narrative of personalization. And this is why people suffer, because they personalize everything. They personalize everything because that's what your ego is doing. You're identifying with every experience like it's me, but it's not you. That's the delusion. You're just becoming aware of the experience, but the ego construct personalizes it like it's a part of you that got hurt, that got rejected. And this is why we suffer, not just you, why everyone suffers. The book I'm reading is the Tibetan Book of the Dead. I did not write it. A monk wrote it, and then it's been translated by many different scholars. Modern day hippie. Thank you, man. Thank you for resonating with the insight. But yeah, guys, let's do some breath work now, because it's very important to keep up with the daily breath work. And I'll look, if you like this information, I'll be back. Today's a short session. I'm on 3 times a week, 4 times a week. I'm on tomorrow for a couple of hours. We can keep talking. If you're resonating with this information, join the community. I'm back tomorrow, same time, but it's not going to be a short session tomorrow. Wednesdays, the session goes for around a couple of hours. But for today's session, to end off, we're going to do 2 rounds of breath work. The breath work is going to consist of 2 rounds of 50 breaths. We're going to do 50 3-1 breathing. You don't have to do it. You can just kind of observe today, or you can just drop me a follow, and that way you'll be notified for future lives if you resonate with this. We're going to do 2 rounds of 3-1 breathing to 50 breaths. A 3-1 breath is like this. We're going to breathe in for 3. We push out with the diaphragm. We bring it to our chest and to full capacity. And then we breathe out through the mouth. And it looks like this when it's done in repetition. And you got to remember, guys, when you're breathing like at this level, it is so healthy for you. I can't even tell you. This new phase of hyperbaric chambers are going crazy in the well-being sector. But if you start to just breathe deeply, you are kind of walking around in this hyperbaric chamber. You know what I mean? So we're going to do 50 3-1 breaths. Once we do the 50, we're going to do 10 3-1 breaths.